Alright guys, here's the review of the Escapement Time PT5000. So, I can't actually find a model number for this one, so that's what I'm going to refer to this as, just the Escapement Time PT5000. I've already done an unboxing for this. If you haven't seen that, I'll leave a link to that up here, check that out. But otherwise, let's get right down to it. So, after doing the unboxing of this, the first thing that a lot of people seem to mention was this second hand. So, if you know your watches, you'll know what that's from. Obviously it's based on the Milgauss second hand, so not original. A few people seem to have an issue with it. I personally don't mind it. I think it adds a little bit something different. Nice little pop of colour as well, but personal preference. Also, it's not a pretty design by any means, this watch. It's quite industrial, I'd say, so it's not going to be to everyone's taste, but I just quite like it because it's something a little bit different. So, speaking of that, let's talk about the side of this first. So, as you can see, we've got a mixture of finishes on this. On the side, we've got an either DLC or PVD coated black. And then, with the bezel, we've got a brushed stainless steel. And then, on the back, we've actually got a polished finish as well. So, mixture of 3 different finishes there. So something a little bit different. Also, a thing that I mentioned in the unboxing, I thought these might have actually been like, possibly like some weird kind of Allen key screw situation, but they are actually just pins, just your standard ones. I've taken them out and tried it, so that's just the design touch, so you don't need to worry about that. If you do want to change out the strap, and talking of that strap, let's get a quick look at it. So it is actually a pretty nice one. Nice and supple, despite being a nice thick one. Now we've got a nice bit of stitching detail on the ends. And on the top as well. It's nicely done. And then we've actually got a nice brushed buckle as well. Matching the case, well, the top of the case anyway. And there you can see again those details on that side. I think it's rather nice. Again, albeit not to everyone's taste. As you can also see as well, we've got an untied crown, but that's pretty typical for Escapement Time. They don't tend to have a lot of branding on. We've just got the branding on the dial, just printed on. Automatic at the bottom above the 6. And then you probably notice when I quickly flick around the back, just give it a quick wipe. We've got absolutely no branding or anything written on the back at all, which is quite unusual. And then there's the star of the show, that PT5000 movement. That nice display case back. So as you can see, we've also only got screws on this, so it's not a screw down case. Case back, sorry, but it's actually screwed. So something to bear in mind. So quickly flicking back around. As you can see, we've got the branding on the dial there, just printed, along with the automatic at the bottom. And then other than that, there's no other branding on the watch at all, including on the strap as you saw before. So it is nice though that they've got a colour matched date wheel on this. Not something you always see, especially on AliExpress watches. So I do like that, do appreciate that. And everything else, if I quickly zoom in a bit more, as you can see, is really nicely finished. I'm particularly impressed with those hands. They are really nicely done. Can't see any issues with them at all. Nice polished finish. And with loom as well. But we'll show that a little bit later on. And everything is just nicely aligned. No issues. So overall, as you'd expect with Escapement Time, good build quality. So now let's get on to the measurements. So we've got a thickness of 10.5mm, diameter of 42mm, lug width of 22mm, and a lug to lug of about 49.5. So, other than the thickness, they're not the slimmest of dimensions overall, but for this kind of style of watch, you kind of expect that. So I'll quickly show you now the movement in action, because this is one of the slight issues I do actually have with this watch, to be honest. So you probably noticed on the back, they have actually got a slight cutout there, which you would have thought would make it a bit easier to grip. But because of the design of this, with these two little bits jutting out here, and this also sticking out slightly, with the crown being slightly recessed in there, it's a little bit awkward to pull out. But luckily it's only a push-pull, it's not a screw down, so it's not too big an issue. So pull it out once, and then you can change the date. Pull it out again, you get a nice click. Second hand stops, so we've got hacking, and then obviously we can just change it. But like I say, rotating it, with my fingers at least anyway, I do tend to catch this slightly, which is a little bit awkward and can be slightly uncomfortable if you're catching it around the inside of there, so something to be aware of. But if you've got smaller hands, that's probably not really an issue, or smaller fingers at least. Or if you do just grab it by the end, I've found that that tends to mitigate the issue. And then obviously push it back in and it re-engages. So quickly zoom in on that crown actually, because it has got a nice bit of grip on it, so it isn't difficult to grip at all. You're not going to be slipping when you're trying to get hold of it. But again, just be aware that it's not the easiest, as it is slightly recessed. And like I say, with the overall design, it can be slightly awkward sometimes. So now let's test out whether we've got sapphire crystal on this. Using the trusty diamond selector too. So as you can see, yep, we have got sapphire crystal. Let's quickly flick it over and test out the back. And as you can see, that is just mineral crystal, which is pretty much the norm for AliExpress watches in my experience. And with it being on the back, you don't really need sapphire, because it's protected by your wrist anyway. So now, let's test out the lume on this. So as you can see, glowing pretty nicely already, but let's charge it up, give it a proper chance. And there we go. So as you can see, we've got BGW9 on this, got that nice ice white blue. It does look really good, really nicely done. As you can see, evenly applied across everything, hands and indices, no issues, no little gaps. Doesn't look slightly faded on any of them. They're all the same brightness, which is sometimes the case, especially with AliExpress watches. But with this one, that's not an issue at all. And it stays at this kind of level a pretty decent amount of time as well. With it being BGW9, you kind of expect that. So, really good lume. So, all that's left to do now is show it you on wrist. So, this is what it looks like on my 7-inch wrist. And I think it does wear really nicely. It doesn't wear as big as I was expecting, given the dimensions, because you've got a nice curvature to those lugs, which does help it conform to wrist. If you've got a smaller than 7-inch wrist though, it might be a touch big, because I think it probably is about on the limit of what I can get away with having a 7-inch one. But overall, if you want something a little bit different, unique design, AliExpress watch, not your standard diver or homage, this is a good one to go for, especially with this PT5000 movement as well. So I definitely recommend it. That's it for this one, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.